God puts us in nations, in places, not by mistake, but to do a job. What if we opened our eyes to the needs of our colleagues, of our leaders, of our subordinates, and we were a priest on their behalf? Welcome to the Repurposing Business Podcast. My name is Brett Johnson.
And I'm Len Johnson.
And we're going to be talking about how to get our business into God's business. Our subtext is Let My Business Go, and we'll have guests from around the world. So thank you for joining us this week and every week on the Repurposing Business Podcast. Welcome to the Repurposing Business Podcast. I'm here with my good friends Donald and Margie Cook. And as I often do at the beginning, I ask them, where are you today?
Yeah. Where are we today? We are on the shores of Mopjack Bay in Virginia, part of the greater Chesapeake Bay area, right on the shore.
That's great. So if we see birds going by in the background,
yeah, there's a resident fish eagle.
Great. Well, we met Don and Margie many years ago. In fact, Margie will tell you how many years ago it was exactly, but I believe it was more than 40. Is that right, Margie?
Yeah, it was in 1980. So yeah, coming up 42 and
coming up for 42.
Yeah, sort of June. Yeah.
And at that stage, they didn't have all four of their kids. Margie, I think, was pregnant with Megan, number
That's right.
3. And so it was amazing. And Don used to arrive with his 2 little kids at Sunday school in Landudno, a small town outside of Cape Town. And we wondered, where's his wife? And she was getting some peace and quiet for a change. Yeah. And fast forward, we ended up in the same church situation. And every Wednesday, I think it was, we came and we did a Bible study type small group thing at your place every single week for quite a long time.
Yeah. And then you used to arrive sort of unannounced sometimes and say, what's for dinner? And we'd have these ad hoc dinners.
That's right. Yeah. So the South African tradition of popping in, which was quite different for me when we arrived in America. You don't just pop in, you get your calendar. Yeah. Where we used to.
Yeah. Those are the good old days.
That's right. So Don and Margie, we've been working together for many years, actually. And I think what we should do perhaps is start with what you're doing now, and then we'll back up into some of the adventures along the way, because the question is, what on earth are 2 young spring chickens like you at this stage of your life doing in India, of all places? It's a long way from Cape Town. What are you doing in India? Tell us a bit about your current work.
Okay, you go. Yeah.
Well, to start off with, I don't think we're spring chickens. So nearly 15 years ago, we picked up 2 suitcases each, headed out to Southeast India to start what today is called hands-on houses. And we build small, low economic houses for widows and the disabled out in the villages of Southeast India. And up until 2 years ago, we were on the ground there and very involved. Since the pandemic, we've been back in the States, but we have seen an amazing thing happening with hands-on houses, and it's grown from just Southeast India to being doing houses all over India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Argentina, Zambia, and we're just amazed at what God's done, the way He's expanded the housing. We've done nearly 285 houses now.
That's quite amazing. 285 houses.
It is. So life's never boring.
Yeah, life's not boring. Yeah, and so Don and Margie don't believe in retirement. They're on the road. So when they're not in India, you guys are fundraising, going from place to place, and because these houses are paid for by donors, right?
Yeah.
And it's very easy for people with a Western mindset to say, well, the people should put something into it themselves, or they should do this, they should do that. Don't just give them a house. But what's the reality? What's the typical profile of somebody who gets a house from hands-on houses?
Well, we focus mainly on widows, and and we try to help the poorest of the poor. So very often they don't have anything to give. You know, they'll do a little bit of labor while the house is being built. At one stage, we wanted the person getting the house to at least feed the workers while the construction work was going on. And one of them said, "Look, sorry, I don't even have enough food to go around. I can't do that." And so we realized, you know, that trying to get them to give something was not a good idea. People say, well, people don't really appreciate something if they get it for nothing. And we've just found that not to be true. I mean, the people that have been getting these houses have been blown away because they never dreamt that they would ever own a house of their own. So it's been a real blessing just to see the gratitude that we've got. You know,
Don, I've probably said that people don't appreciate something like, for example, when we do a training and we scholarship somebody 100%, I normally say that means 100% they won't do all of their homework and won't do the assignment.
Yes.
But actually, when it comes to faith, we get something for nothing, right? We've just been through it, and so it's a bit disingenuous for us to say, well, people won't appreciate it if they get it for nothing. If they have nothing.
Yes.
So widows and orphans, and often the widows are persona non grata. They have no status in the society. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. There was a time, probably about 300 years ago, that widows in India were expected to die with their husband's body. That they would burn the body and put the widow on the funeral pyre. And William Carey was quite involved in trying to stop that and eventually got it outlawed. But the attitude towards widows is they have they don't honor them and sort of believe that they're worth anything, you know. And so we've seen even today when somebody's widowed, they actually go through a ceremony and pull off her wedding necklace and take things away from her and sort of ceremonially just degrade her. You know, it's like part of the culture. So, and in India, we find very few widows ever remarry. You know, I think we know two Christian ladies who are educated and, you know, have sort of come out of that system a bit and that have actually remarried. We haven't really come across, you know, any more people that have actually remarried after losing a spouse. So it's the
cultural norm coming out of the Hindu belief system.
So let's backtrack. You were in South Africa, Don. You were lecturing at a local college/university. Margie, you're a teacher by trade, I believe, and taught all sorts of things. Anybody who would stop by and get taught, Margie would teach them as well, whether it was swimming or whether it was school or tennis or whatever. So and so there you are in South Africa. So how did you end up in the States, firstly? And we'll take that thing. And what were some of the keys to God leading you? How did He speak to you to make such a big move?
Dream that changed everything.
You can tell the story.
So we call the story the dream that changed everything. So we were just a normal, ordinary family living on the Atlantic seaboard in South Africa, involved in local church, local school, local community, broader family, thinking we would spend all our days in Cape Town, beautiful Cape Town, but God had other ideas. And in 1989, I think I had a dream, and I woke up that morning, a very vivid dream, and I knew it was from the Lord. And it was a dream of a house with specific architectural features and plants in the garden, flowers and things that were distinctive. And I wrote it down in my journal because I was very busy with 4 small children. And I thought, if I don't write it down today, I'll forget the details. So I filled up a page in my journal, quite a big journal, and just wrote at the bottom, I think we'll live in this house one day, and just left it. And about 6.5 years later, we got an email from our dear friend, Brett Johnson, saying that you guys were planning to move, and you wanted a bigger house in the Bay Area where you could establish your new business, your new ministry, and live at the same time and have one rental as opposed to two. And you were looking, and if anybody had any information on how God might be leading you, to let you know. And a communal friend of ours, June, volunteered to send that dream across to you. She said, Margie, you've got to fax it across. In those days, it was faxing, pre-email.
Right.
It's a long time ago. And so I sent Brett the dream, and you were excited about the dream, and you said you were going to look for the house in the Bay Area. Well, you looked, you didn't find it. You settled on something else. And then in September of that year, our daughter had Joanne, just come back from spending 6 months with you and helping you with your children and other things. And she and I were walking on the beach, Llandudno Beach, and we came up to the house and the phone was ringing. Now, in those days, the phone had a cord. You couldn't walk around with it. So I sat down on the stairs where the telephone was, and it was Brett on the other end. And Brett said, are you sitting down? And I said, yes. And Brett said, I found the house. And I said, oh. And you said, it's in Hawaii. And I said, oh, because to me, Hawaii was palm trees, one island, palm trees and hula hula girls. I didn't really know much about Hawaii. Anyway, Brett then flew me out to Hawaii, and we spent a week looking at this old house called King's Mansion up on the hill. About how much is it, like 1,200 feet high?
About the elevation's probably about
something like that.
12,000.
And we ended up after many hours of prayer with YWAM people on the big veranda called a lanai in Hawaii, deciding that it would be a good thing for us to come out and spend 6 months at King's Mansion, see if it was something that God was saying to continue with, because Brett was going to start a partnership with the University of the Nations to a ministry to the world of business and government. And so God took us as a family halfway around the world. Hawaii from Cape Town is 12 time zones, whichever way you go. You can't go any further. And we lived in that house for 4.5 years. So that God guided us by that dream.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And I remember getting photographs of King's Mansion and then seeing your faxed document and saying, okay, these seem to be the same thing. So that's amazing. That's amazing. So now you are in Hawaii. You've moved with your 4 children at that stage, and tough thing to do. I mean, it's a big career decision because it involved selling a house and doing all sorts of things. So tell us some of the things that happened, a couple of highlights of living in Kona. Margie, I know you had a situation with your wallet. What happened with your wallet?
Oh, in Kona.
Yeah, Kona.
I lost my wallet. I went shopping. I went to Safeway, bought some provisions, checked out with the cashier. We drove down the road to another little shop, maybe 5 minutes down the road, to get something specific. Got up to the cash till there, put my hand into my purse to find my wallet, and it wasn't there. So then I panicked. I thought, I must have left it at Safeway. Got in the car, went back to Safeway, went to the cashier. I said to her, did you see my wallet? No, didn't see it. I went to the customer service. Nobody had it in a wallet. Had all my credit cards, it had my driver's license, everything in it. So that's, and not much money, some money, but not much. But the thing is losing all those cards. Right. I got in the car to drive home, it was a 20-minute drive. And as I was driving, I was praying, and I was just saying, I was cross, and I was saying, Lord, cause those people who've stolen my wallet, cause it to be like a burning coal in their hand, so they're not going to want to hold on to it. And I was praying and praying. I got home, told Don, who immediately started canceling all my cards, and it was on a Friday afternoon. The next morning, I went down to the church to, I think it must have been a women's prayer meeting because Don wasn't part of it. And during that time, you tell them the next one.
I got a call from a lady that was a tourist visiting Hawaii, and she said, "We've got your wallet." And I said, "Oh, that's great. You know, we've been praying for it to come back." You know, and she said, "We found it at that little church down on near Children's Beach." And I said, "That's about 4 miles away from where we think we lost it." And she said, "Well, we got it. Come and get it." And I went round. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And she said it's got everything in it. There were $4 notes in it, and you know, and they were still there. You know, so and she found it up right at the front of the I suppose what you would call the altar in this little church. And somebody had obviously felt that wallet was too hot to handle anymore, and gave it to the Lord. You know? So,
That was a miracle.
They were good name it and claim it people. They would have said they were sowing your wallet to get a return, you know, but they were just getting rid of it. Yeah, so it's fascinating. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of after our son James's wedding. You'll remember the story with the car keys. Remember that with the rental?
Yes, I do. Yeah, and, amazing.
One of these situations. Where were the keys for the rental car? And because you lose those, you have to pay. It was quite a distance to the Denver airport and so on. And eventually it turned out that when Andy and Carla had gone quite a long distance to another location, they found them on top of the car that they were driving.
Right. Amazing. I remember that story.
Boy. But Don, I know that you've had an experience around healing, physical healing in your body. And Don, I know that for the people who watch this on video, you only look like you're 45, but you're actually a few years older than that. I think
that's right.
That's right.
Not bad for 47, eh?
Not bad for 57 if you're dyslexic. But
in 2 months' time, it'll be 76.
Yeah.
And in 2 weeks' time, I'll be 73.
So it's interesting because, Don, you've remained in pretty good health, but you had a bit of a health scare. What happened there?
Yeah, I suddenly found while we would sort of go swimming and we were visiting our daughter Joanne in Connecticut. And, in the pool, I suddenly felt like my heart was not really feeling that good. And while I was exercising, there was this pain in my heart. And I then found that I couldn't really climb upstairs without my heart feeling sore. And so I went to see a cardiologist. I went to see our doctor who's in South Africa, and he sent me to a cardiologist who put me on a treadmill and did the whole thing. And he said, "You've got angina," you know. And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Well, technically we should put you on, you know, do the angiogram and see what we can do." But I was going to be flying out of South Africa within a week. And he said, "We can't do that if you're going to fly out. So put me on beta blocker tablets and baby aspirin on a daily basis." And I, you know, had a lot of pressure put on me to go and get the medical procedure done. People said to me, "Look, you're being irresponsible." But I'd sort of looked online and seen the potential complications with angiograms and with stents, and I just didn't have the faith to do it. I sort of thought, well, yeah. I prayed, you know, I prayed, "Lord, you know, you commended the persistent widow for harassing the judge, you know, and how about I don't stop harassing you until this gets sorted?" I know at the time I sort of thought, well, this is a bit of a cheat, but anyway, the Lord said it was okay. So I said, well, you know, I'm very happy to keep pestering you until this gets sorted out. And about 2 or 3 years later, I was sort of playing with our grandkids, and I found I could run after them, and my heart wasn't complaining, because it had been quite bad if we'd been in an airport and had to make a connection and had to sort of start walking quickly. My heart would complain. And this time it was gone. You know, it wasn't there. And then eventually got back to the cardiologist, and he put me through the test again because I wanted to stop taking these beta blockers because they were making me feel cold. And he pulled me in with Margie and he said, well, look, either you never had angina or something miraculous has happened. You know? And so we said, we'll go for the miraculous happening. Yeah. So yeah, that was amazing. You know, it was So this the Lord has been so good. And so at the moment, I still sort of, whenever I go up a flight of stairs, I sort of say, yeah, no, there's no complaint there at all.
It is amazing, actually. You know, a miracle, I think.
Don, you talk about vitamin P or vitamin P, right?
Yes.
Yes. And then you get vitamin P squared when you've got to pray without ceasing.
Persistent prayer.
Very good. Now, this has been a bit of a wild journey for you guys. So how's it been for your kids, and have they seen God do things for them as well? And what does that look like? Now, by the way, your kids are now all
grown up. 38 to 46. Well, I think that they've all seen different miracles in their lives, and they've all followed God's leading and gone to live in different places. We have children in Hawaii, both our boys, and we have one daughter on the east coast of the States about to leave and move down south, and with her family. And then our younger daughter and her husband teach English in a Christian university in South Korea. And I think they've all made it a focus to pray and seek God where they should go and when they should go and what they should do. And they've experienced miracles in their own lives. I don't know whether you want us to share some of those, Brett.
It would be useful. I mean, I remember when you guys visited came and lived in the States for a little while when they were much younger, of course. I know they saw God's provision in different ways. Just as an aside story, Don and Margie needed to buy a car. And so Don and I went looking for a car, and we found this cheap rubbish car lot with these large American cars. And so Don and I asked if we could test drive a car, and we took this green gunmetal long Cadillac type of thing with 2 doors where the inside of the doors was coming off and so on. It was real gas guzzler. And we drove back to the house where Margie was, and we announced that Don had bought this car. Margie, I don't even know.
I remember that so well. I just thought, I saw you through the window of the bedroom, and you said, come and look. And I sort of, as I walked through the house, I just said, Lord, help me. So what do I get to say? There's this car with a tiny little back seat for 4 children. I get into the car. I don't know who was in the driver's seat, either you or Don. And I put my hand out to pull the door closed, and the whole inside panel comes away in my hand, and the door stays open.
Pretty funny. Anyway, we thought it was
the state of that car. That was funny. It really was.
The funny thing about that whole story was that we ended up buying a Volkswagen van, and I remember when we went to the car lot, the salesman said, well, there's that Volkswagen van over there. You know, I said, no, I definitely do not want a Volkswagen van, because we'd had quite a few, and I had spent so many hours working on them that I didn't want to see. I actually had said, I don't ever want to see another air-cooled Volkswagen engine again. And then it sort of dawned on us all, maybe better the one we know than the one we don't know. And so we ended up buying this van. And you'd had actually worked out the economics and told us, look, it would pay you to buy, you know, to spend this money on this van. And so we drove it across to Indiana, and then I was a bit worried about it on the way back. You know, I'd sort of done a bit of work on the engine before we left. And as we were, I think we'd got near Chicago, and we were taking the most northerly route back to San Francisco. And all of a sudden the engine just went, started rattling, and amazingly, there was a truck stop right there. So we coasted into the truck stop.
Yeah.
And I remember just sort of collapsing on the wheel and saying, Lord, you know, that which I most greatly feared has come upon me. How could you let this happen? You know, this is exactly what we don't need, because we'd run out of money. We had to spend a week in Europe waiting for them to finish servicing the plane we were going to fly back to South Africa on. It was a one plane airline. And here we are with a broken vehicle, no money. We'll have to, I don't know what we were going to do. And our daughter Megan, who was about 6, how old was she? 6 or 7?
6, nearly 7.
Yeah, she chirped up from the back seat and said, let's pray. And I was like, look, this is mechanical, you know. Being an engineer, I didn't really believe that God had anything to do with mechanics, you know. So anyway, there was nothing else to do, so we prayed. And I said to Margie, I said, well, look, you start the car while I'm at the back. I just want to listen to the engine and see if I can get an idea of how bad this is. And I opened the back of the van, and Margie started the engine and floored it. She put the accelerator, and this thing just suddenly roared. And I thought this thing's going to fly to pieces in my face. And then the next thing, it was just sort of ticking away like a little sewing machine. And I thought, okay, right. But, you know, that was Megan, you know, let's pray. And then we drove all the way to Yellowstone, down back to Disneyland, and that's another story. And then sold the van to very dear friends of ours.
Yeah.
We kept it for, was it 1 or 2 years?
We kept it for quite a few years until there was something that happened, I think, and then we sold it to some other friends for $1.
Yeah, we know those friends.
We spoke to those friends.
They told us they got the car.
They told us they got the car and they hated it. They absolutely hated it.
$1 trying to fix it or something. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's a funny story. Yeah.
But from there, I remember not believing that God fixes mechanical things too. I remember we were on an assignment in Hawaii with one of our clients, praying for a laptop. Do you remember you were praying for a laptop? We were working in Honolulu with a company.
Right.
We were there, and one of the laptops of one of our team members broke down.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Don said, okay, now I'll pray for the laptop. And one of the consultants working in that company walked past while you were praying for the laptop and promptly came in and wanted to know, are you guys Christians? She sounded
we see quite a few things happening and we decided to pray. Okay.
So tell us a little bit about, you alluded to going through Disneyland. So you said you were out of money and then you went to Disneyland. What happened there?
You want to tell us?
Well, we can do it.
Yeah.
We had no money left to go to Disneyland, and Don had promised to take the kids to Disneyland. And we really didn't know what we were going to do. So we were about to leave Monticello, Indiana. And on the Saturday before we were due to go, we had a garage sale of some of the few things that we had bought at garage sales. And during that morning, the postman came walking up the road and popped a few letters through the front door. And I picked them up, and there was one from a girl that we'd met once with you guys, actually, in San Francisco, who didn't know the Lord at the time. And she had sent us a letter, and I opened it, and inside there were 2 $100 bills. And we had never been given money before. We were quite amazed, not that sort of money anyway. And she wrote this letter saying she felt that she needed to send us $100 to take our kids to Disneyland. We had no communication. There was no internet, nothing in those days. And at the end of the letter, she said, I don't normally do this sort of thing. And if you don't want to receive it, you can give it to someone else. But I just felt perhaps I should put in another $100 bill. So Don and I were amazed. So we put those $200 aside. We managed to scrape up another $300 from the garage sale and a few other things. And set off for 2 weeks camping So that 300 covered camping, food, and gas to get us to Disneyland. And when we got to Disneyland, 2 nights in the campsite, 1 day for the whole family of 6 in Disneyland, 1 meal at lunchtime, and $5 each for the kids to buy a souvenir, $200. Isn't that amazing? The way God provides. And Don always says to our kids, what does he say? What do you say with ice creams?
Yeah, it's like, to me, it was just such an illustration of the Lord's heart for his children, that I would never get offended if my kids asked me for ice cream. I wouldn't give it to them every time necessarily, but I would be very sort of sad if they'd never asked me for treats. If they always thought, well, I was not that sort of father. And I realized, well, that's the Father's heart towards us. I mean, why would he not want to give us the money to take our kids to Disneyland and treat them? So it was a big lesson for me at the time, to realize that so often we probably sadden the Lord by not asking him for things that may not be necessary. But I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for things that are a treat, and it just has a, so that was a big lesson for me, as a father, seeing, what the Father's heart was like.
So $200 was back in the day, 87 would cover that. I don't think it would today.
That's right. Yeah. And back in that day, Donald was the Dairy Queen king, as I recall. Going to the Dairy Queen.
I know. We used to find that we could get, I think in those days a blizzard was like $1.29, and the small one, and then the medium size was like $1.69, and then the large one, which was like 4 times the size of the small one, was $1.99. So we used to go to the Dairy Queen and buy one big $1.99 blizzard and then sort of move it around the table. And I remember people were
each person would have a spoonful.
And then the pastor of the church in Monticello decided he was going to take us all to Disneyland after the service, and
not Disneyland,
to Dairy Queen, sorry. And he sort of said to Andrew, what would you like? And Andy looked at him and said, can I have my own blizzard? And he said, of course you can. And Andy was like, can I really have my very own blizzard? Said, yeah. And then when we left, they gave us a book of coupons for Dairy Queen that we sort of carefully used on our trip across the States, and then got to California to find that there were hardly any Dairy Queens in the San Francisco.
Let me tell you another way that God provided, which I think is a complete miracle. Living back in South Africa, our kids went to the same school I think you went to when you were little, London Primary, little farm school. And when we came to know the Lord, we were involved in a church that had started a Christian school, and we sent our youngest here and there for grade 1. And he'd been there maybe 4 weeks. And I felt that we should take our daughters out of the state school, elementary state school, and take them to the Christian school as well. And I told Don, I said, Don, we need to do this. And Don looked at me and looked at me again, and he said, well, show me the money that's going to cover the school fees, and I'll agree with you. And because we could really only afford one of our 4 children to go there at the time. And so I said, okay. So I thought about it, prayed about it, and I felt the Lord saying to fast and pray. So I set aside a week and got to day 6, and I felt the Lord saying, okay, it's done. So I said, fine. We're sitting in bed that night. Now, remember, the phone's attached by a wire halfway down the house. And in those days, it was bad manners to call someone after 9 o'clock at night. You just didn't do it. And so Don and I sitting in bed reading, I don't know what we were reading, but we weren't asleep, we were awake. And the phone went. So Don got up, walked down the corridor, picked up the phone, and it was a friend of ours calling late. It was nearly 10 o'clock from Switzerland. And she had relocated to Switzerland and they rented out their house a couple of streets behind ours while they were in Switzerland. And the rental had come to an end. I think it was a year's rental, and they needed new tenants. And they'd asked 2 rental agents to supply a tenant, and these 2 rental agents were arguing. I've got a tenant, no, it's my tenant. And, they were arguing about it. And she called her husband, who didn't know, wasn't a believer, but she was. He said to her, call up Don and Margie and ask them to manage the house for us, and we'll pay them 10%. So we took on that house, and the 10% covered the girls' fees right through that Christian school, all the way through. They both graduated probably 6 and 7 years later. And at that stage, we moved to Hawaii and no longer needed the money. But that was in a miraculous way. God provided that money for their school fees. Yeah. I always think of that. I was just so amazed, because we'd never thought of doing something like that ever. It was just a total miracle for us.
I actually had some doubts about that whole deal, and I'd actually said to Margie, look, I want to see the first check from this rent thing, and the first time I went to collect the rent from the tenants, they gave me a check, and I sort of thought, well, okay, and then the check bounced. When I banked it, the bank said, sorry, there are no funds in this account. And I was like, I was prepared to put my faith in a check, and the check was not worth putting faith in. It was actually, I think it was just a lesson not to put faith in a check.
Yeah.
So anyway, it got sorted out, but it was so funny that the check that I said I was going to put my faith in actually ended up bouncing.
Right, yeah. Right, yeah. Well, one of the things that struck me over the years with you guys is, Margie, you must be the queen of frequent flyer miles and travel schedules. And I know when you were doing a lot of traveling, certainly COVID slowed that down a little bit, but you've had your fair share of travel stories. What are some of the things that were highlights for you in terms of situations where God stepped in? Last week, I talked to Dina, and she had the rather miraculous encounter with the angels in the airport in Thailand. When
I remember that story.
Being locked down. And I know that you guys have traveled to many parts of the world. It's not just that you worked in India. Before you moved there, you had actually traveled there prior. You've traveled all over in different parts of Africa and in Europe and elsewhere. But what are some of the travel highlights where God has come through for you guys?
Don's going to tell you the Mumbai story, and then I'll tell you another one.
We traveled around India with our family of 6, and plus Andrew's friend Bevan Haynes, and so there were 7 of us traveling together, and we'd done a camel safari up in Rajasthan, and then traveled on this horrific bus down from Ahmedabad to Mumbai or something, and then we ended up in Goa for about a week. And it was quite a thing to get around in India in those days. They had some sort of computerized booking system for the trains, but they could only book you from where you were to where you wanted to go. You had to get to the other destination to be able to book your return ticket. And so we didn't have tickets to get back from Goa to Mumbai, where we were going to fly out. And I remember at one stage wanting to change the ticket, and I actually had this line up in the Gulf Air office in Delhi for pretty much a whole day just to be able to speak to an agent. You got there and you took a ticket and you sat and waited. And the lady who served me said, look, these flights are fully booked until the end of the month. I think our flight was on the 13th of the month. And she said, all the flights from the 13th to the end are all fully booked. So she said, look, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. Just stick with what you've got.
Yeah.
So I was a bit worried about actually making that connection. So we took a ferry from Goa to Mumbai a day early and spent the night in a hotel that I took a photograph of the room to remind Margie what she was prepared to sleep in, and it was just There were pigeons in the toilet, and there were some very grey-looking pieces of underwear drying out in the bathroom. We didn't know who they belonged to. And anyway, we got all our stuff on the train and headed off to Mumbai airport, sort of about 5 or 6 hours early, to find a little sign above the Gulf Air check-in to say flight cancelled.
No.
And at midnight, we discovered that had been the previous day's flight, and that our flight was also cancelled. So the 2 cancelled flights in Mumbai. And I literally just, I thought, again, how could this happen? This is what we don't need. And I sort of rolled out my sleeping bag on the floor of Mumbai, of the old Mumbai airport, which is also not the cleanest airport in the world. And I just lay down, just sort of collapsed. And the next thing, I felt this kick on my foot, and it was Andrew. And he said, Dad, wake up, wake up. He said, I've talked to the Gulf Air person, and he says that if we can find another airline to fly us out, they'll endorse our ticket. And so let's go and see what we can do. And so we got up and went around airline offices, and of course they were either closed or they didn't have anything to help us with. And then the Gulf Air guy we spoke to said, look, the computer is showing that there's an Air India flight to Abu Dhabi that has 12 seats available. So why don't you go and see if they can help you? So of course we got to the Air India check-in, and there's pandemonium there, the people screaming and shouting, I've got a meeting and all. And we tried to check in, and the guy said, look, forget it. He said, but in the meantime, Margie and Joanne and all the rest are praying. I mean, they're just praying. And while I was standing waiting, this little Gulf Air guy came. There was a sort of smallish guy in a Gulf Air uniform, came up to the Air India official, and I heard him say, look, won't you help these people? I'll owe you. And I thought, that's a very strange thing to say. And as soon as they closed the check-in, the guy in charge said to the girl at the counter, he said, check them in. And she said, what, all 7 of them? And he said, yes, put them on, put them on. And so the next thing, we were on this flight to Abu Dhabi, and I've still kept that boarding pass. It was just the most amazing thing.
It was amazing, because we got 7 of the 12 seats. There was a total answer to prayer.
That's amazing.
I sat on our suitcases and we just prayed. I think we kept praying on and off for a couple of hours. It's the longest I think I've done that.
Wow. That is amazing. That is amazing.
And we had another amazing, this was an indirect, it wasn't an answer to prayer, it was just God providing something for us. We were leaving India to fly out, and I think it was for Ruby's wedding, was it? I think so. I think we were going for Ruby's wedding. And I woke up on the Friday morning having had a very vivid dream. And in the dream, we were upgraded to business class. And I thought, that's nice. That's interesting. So we got to the airport late that night, because the plane started in the evenings. And got to the Lufthansa check-in, and checked in, and a very nice gentleman who was checking us in said to us, would you like to upgrade for $500 each? And I looked at him very directly in the eyes, and I said, no, but we would be very happy to have a complimentary upgrade. And he looked at me and he said, that only happens when you go aboard the plane. And as my eyes connected with him, I felt the Holy Spirit saying, this is the man. And I just knew it was going to happen. So we went off to the business class lounge, and we sat there for a couple of hours, and then they called our flight. And as we walked towards the line, the man came running with the 2 tickets in his hand. He said, here they are, upgrade business all the way to Germany. It was so amazing, because I'd had the dream. It was like, and it wasn't even 24 hours later. It was
wonderful. It's amazing how the dream sets your expectation then for what's going to happen. And what a precious thing that God would do that. Yeah, I know that I've often prayed for upgrades and haven't got them, but
we have too. But it's very nice when you get it.
It's very nice when it does happen. And so that's amazing. So just to recap, you guys still working with Hands on Houses. It's now expanded beyond India. And if people want to see what you're up to, they can go to handsonhouses.com. they can also be in touch with you from there to get your newsletters that you put out. And
And we're also on Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook
Yeah.
as well. And this is an ongoing work, and it's expanding. It's amazing how it's expanded during COVID. And certainly it's made a difference in the lives of many, many people. And some amazing stuff. You can go to the website and click on the map and find the stories of different people. Not all of them widows, but people in difficult circumstances. And just so that people know, Don and Margie aren't standing on the street corner handing out houses in India. They have partners on the ground who are doing the vetting and the screening and dealing with some of the local politics and so on. But it's been an amazing journey, and it's exciting to see where it goes in the future. And so thanks so much for all you guys are doing.
Great.
It has been an amazing journey. And we're just grateful to you and then for all the encouragement over the years, Brett. You have encouraged us and prayed for us and supported us in many ways. And we're very, very grateful for that.
I always remember when we came out to Hawaii for the first, I took a 6-month sabbatical leave to come to Hawaii, and then had to go back to Cape Town for another 6 months before we could come out more permanently. And I remember Lynn saying to me, so now, what is your biggest fear in if you had to come to Hawaii? And I remember saying, my biggest fear is not coming to Hawaii, because that really, Brett, you guys have really helped us incredibly. And I also remember very vividly when we first wanted to go to India, I thought, oh, well, we'll stay in Hawaii and we'll go to India for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, and then we'll sort of do a bit of house building and then come back to Hawaii and sort of just enjoy the Hawaiian environment again. And I remember you saying, I don't know whether I agree with that. I think you should be going out more permanently. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then we got to a situation where the nest was getting very thorny in Hawaii, and I remember calling you up to ask for advice. Brett, what do I need to do about the situation that seems to be getting a little bit uncomfortable? And you were saying, well, look, forget about that. Don't you think the Lord's saying you need to go to Hawaii on a more permanent basis? India on a more permanent. And I remember thinking, okay, that's what it is.
Well, that's often how God works. I've met many people, as have you, who no longer feel comfortable in their local church, for example. The local church, and it's sometimes just God's way of moving people on and getting them to go. It's not the fault of the local church or the business that no longer wants you around, or the job situation or whatever. And it's often, I think, part of the challenge that God has is getting people mobile. But once they're mobile, once you have wheels, you're useful to the kingdom. And so once you have a kingdom passport, and as you guys are, incredibly flexible, moving all of the time, then you can do some damage to the devil. Whilst you're stationary, you're harmless in terms of doing too much. So I love the fact that your concern, Don, was not getting mobile, and you guys have kept going since. I remember my mom passed away last year, as you guys will remember, and my brother Doug said, well, she only keeps living because you guys keep giving her jobs to do. If you stop giving her projects, she could peacefully go off to heaven. Well, there's no danger of you stopping getting projects, and so we look forward to future adventures that you'll have.
Brett, thanks so much.
Adventure's my love language, Brett.
Oh, that's right. Well, we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, and thanks so much for sharing your story. Much appreciated.